I'm Larissa. I'm a freelance artist and a really big Disney fan. So this past year, my husband and I invested in an annual pass to Disney World. As an artist, one of the things I was pretty excited to catch this year was the fairly new Festival of the Arts at Epcot. The food was definitely pretty good. Not as good, I feel, as the Food and Wine Festival. I don't know if it was just there was less of it, or if they just really don't focus as much on the food, because I feel like there were very few places at Food and Wine that at least my husband or I didn't walk up to one of the booths and be like, yes, we need to try one of these things. Whereas at the Festival of the Arts, it was like, that's okay, but I think we'll move on. Was the food delicious? Sometimes yes, sometimes slightly less so. I wouldn't say that we had anything that we thought was bad. Just some of it was kind of but it was definitely pretty. For instance, the churro paintbrushes, super cute. I liked the colors. It was a little slow when you ordered it because somebody literally was back there dipping each churro into a different color of icing, but worth it. Probably the more important part of the Festival of the Arts was like the ambiance behind it. The design, the aesthetic, the pretty factor, because art. They had all these really cute little photo ops that you could really put yourself or your family or your friends into some famous paintings. They were usually placed based on the country being in Epcot. For instance, in America, you could cross the Delaware with George Washington. The downside of the photo ops was that they seemed very disorganized. Part of the issue was that sometimes there was a PhotoPass photographer and sometimes there wasn't. If there wasn't a photographer, there actually tended to be like no line, because anyone that wanted their whole party wasn't able to do that really unless they were set up with like a tripod and a timer and everything. Or they had a really, friendly stranger nearby. But when there was a photographer, it tended to be a little bit longer of a line, because even if you aren't on Memory Maker or have a annual pass holder or something, they would be willing to take your picture with, of course, your camera. When the line started to get long is when things started to get confusing. For the same photo op, you would walk by one time and see the line forming on one side, and then we would walk by a little bit later, literally on the same day usually, and the line would be forming on the other side. A little confusing to guests that are there multiple days. I'm guessing that it's just the PhotoPass photographer just decided when they were setting up, hey, all right, go ahead and line up over here, and then a different photographer later would prefer to go another way. For instance, I wanted a picture of me in the mermaid setup because I kind of have a thing for mermaids. And when I walked by one time, there was a big, huge crowd, so I'm like, I'll wait. I knew we were going to be coming several days to Epcot on that trip. So the next time I walked by, and there was a very short line on one side of the photo op. And I thought it looked a little funny because when I'd walked by before, I thought the line was on the other side. But I'm like, that's the line, I'll get into it. There was one group that was getting photographed at the time I walked up, and then two other groups behind them, and then me. So by the time I got up there, the PhotoPass photographer actually got a little bit snippy. He's like, the line is supposed to be over here. And I'm like, sorry, I was in a line. I was a little confused. I didn't know what he wanted me to do. But I went ahead and I'd waited in the line, so I just walked up and had him take my picture. Another fun thing they did for Festival of the Arts were set up paintings throughout the park that aren't normally there. Some of them were just purely aesthetic. For instance, in France, they had a painting of Aurora that had her dress changing from pink to blue. It was a cute little fun thing. It fit into the country, it promoted the art, and it's something that's not normally there. So hunting down these pictures in the different countries was kind of a fun little Easter egg hunt for people who go fairly regularly, but it didn't stand out like as odd or obtrusive to the people who maybe don't know much about the festival or hadn't been to Disney before or not often. They might not really know, hey, this is something specific to the festival, which I don't think that's a problem. I think that was actually kind of interesting that it was not obtrusive. So if you don't care about the festival, it's not going to bother you because it just sort of fits into the country. But if you are there specifically for the festival, you probably know the park a little bit better and you will be able to hunt those things down and spot them immediately. Another fun little thing they did was they had a series of famous paintings scattered throughout the park. but instead of just their normal appearance, somebody had worked in a little figment into each one. So again, if you're a big Disney fan and you're a big Epcot fan, you're going to know about Figment and you're going to be pretty excited about that, and it gives you a little something extra to do. There were also a lot of more like official and Disney guided activities and shows and things going on based around the Festival of the Arts that were pretty cool. We stopped to watch a pair of acrobats put on a show right there by the fountain behind Spaceship Earth, and it was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. They were done well enough. I wasn't honestly that impressed as someone with a dance background, not at all in acro, but I've been around a lot of people that do a lot of acro, and they were okay, don't get me wrong, but I didn't also see anything that I was like, wow, that was amazing. It was all stuff I'd seen before. But then at the same time, this wasn't like a big Cirque du Soleil, Lanuba set and scene and stage. It was literally just their normal little stage that's always there. So they didn't have a lot to do. But the crowd really seemed to enjoy it. There were a lot of cheers, and there wasn't even that big of a crowd when we were there right then. In front of the same stage at different times, they also had a series of living statues set up. They were really cool and very entertaining, a lot more interactive than just like watching a show. Lines would form up and people could go and have their picture taken with whatever statue they preferred. They had the different colors and each one had a different theme. They were very entertaining and interactive. Like when I've seen living statues before, they might lean towards a person that's giving them a picture, but these guys were definitely more hands-on. The one that I walked up to, for instance, to have my picture with, you can't really see it in the pictures of the video because obviously it's behind me, but he actually reached out and he grabbed the loop on the top of my backpack and he's like pulling it up. So while I couldn't really tell what was happening behind me, I knew something was going on because he didn't pull it up enough that it was really obvious. Like he didn't completely lift it off my back, but he was definitely messing with me, and like I could tell like there was like a crowd of people in front of me that they were waiting their turn or just watching the statues, and there was my husband with the camera and they're all like laughing, so I knew he was doing something. So it was an entertaining, fun little doodad, and there was never a huge line for those, so you could, if you weren't too picky about which one you wanted, you could get in and have a picture with one of them pretty easily. And if not, it was fun to just sort of watch them interacting with the random crowd people too. Whoever would actually end up going up to somebody, something entertaining almost always happened, and it was fun. Starting right there at that fountain stage and then going down the bridge and then all around World Showcase, there were a bunch of booths and tents set up, each one dedicated to a different artist who had done a series of pieces based around Disney characters and movies and shows. And sometimes, if you were lucky, the artist would be there in the booth, sometimes talking about their process or their inspiration or just asking whatever questions, sometimes actually painting a piece. It was really cool for people that aren't really into the art world so much, like, you know, to be able to talk to an artist sometimes is kind of interesting to people. I know, like, it surprises me sometimes when people will be like really intrigued by like how I did something, and to me it's so boring and normal and blasé, but these people will be really intrigued by my painting of a dog or whatever. Another fun thing set up was a long line of sidewalk chalk pieces that were done along the bridge leading from that fountain stage again towards the showcase. They seem to be the same ones each time in the same places, but because it is sidewalk chalk and it is Florida and rain happens regularly, the pieces would sometimes be perfect and beautiful and brand new, and sometimes kind of washed away and hard to tell what was going on maybe. But then they also would almost always have at least one artist out there actually making their piece again. So that was really fun because you could sit and you could watch someone's process, and sometimes they seemed very like focused, I guess depending on the artist. They were very intent on their work, they're just going along, silent, maybe listening to their music or whatever. Then other times you would walk by and there would be someone having a full conversation with the artist while they're working, which is like, again, very cool. It can, somebody who is not an artist can be getting into that mindset a little bit and getting behind the scenes sort of You don't often have somebody watching you do your work as an artist. I assume it's kind of cool for someone who's not an artist to get a chance to watch a piece be created. And it was also kind of interesting because where we were there several days, I might have seen the pieces washed out at one point and then walk by and see them recreating it again. So I thought that was a lot of fun. You could see that they had their visual reference, like a little printout of what their final product needed to be for color placement and whatnot, and scale. And that was cool. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think people need to realize that as an artist, you don't normally just completely freehand everything. You usually have some sort of a reference, unless you're doing like full-on abstract or something. I think my favorite activity for the festival was the long wall mural that had a series of sort of pop art pixelated figment portraits. I never saw a huge line to wait for it, but it did occasionally have a short wait when we walked by. And sometimes you could just walk right up like we did. I waited until we walked by and I saw nobody there in line, and I went over, and my husband and I each were given a different colored little tub of paint with a number on top. And then you walk up to the mural and they would have, in each little square, there would be a number corresponding to your color of paint. So it was a little bit of a scavenger hunt again. You had to find your squares. So that was a lot of fun to me because it was interactive and like very hands-on, and I felt like I was contributing in some very small way to Disney World. So as a major Disney nerd, that was kind of fun. After you were done filling in your squares, you went to the end of the line and they had little recycling bins set up to get rid of your little plastic tubs of paint and the brushes. There was a cast member there handing out these little postcards. So again, you have a fun little memento like, hey, I did this at Disney, remember this, and you get to talk about it and remember it, and it's a lot of fun. And that's totally free. There was no additional cost to paint. You didn't have to buy the postcard. It was just a fun, free little thing that was part of the festival that I really thought that was like a highlight to me, which seems weird because it took all of like 3 minutes total, including walking in and out of that line. But it was fun, you know, people were laughing and joking as they painted and talking to each other and like, oh, here's a 6, do you need a 6 or whatever, and it was a lot of fun and I really liked it. Even though it was only a few minutes, it was something that was different and unique and not normal Disney, like that's not always there, so it was a little fun thing. Final thoughts, as an artist, the Festival of the Arts was a lot of fun. I still might prefer food and wine just because I like yummy food. Who doesn't? But as someone who has a BFA, a Bachelor's of Fine Arts, but also at one point thought that they were going to be a professional dancer and also spend a ton of time in the theater in school all the way up into college, I liked seeing some of that stuff portrayed all over the parks. I like that it wasn't a focus on just the performing arts because they already employed dancers, or just on the like visual arts because they can set up a few paintings or whatever. They really went across the bar and set everything up and included everything, and I really did appreciate that. I don't know that I'll be like dead set on, oh, we have to go again at this time next year. But if we're looking at dates in the future and one of our choices is to go at a time when the Festival of the Arts is happening versus a time a couple weeks later maybe that isn't, that might sway my choice a little bit. So that's my impression of Disney's 2019 Festival of the Arts in Epcot. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll come back because I do plan on attending the Flower and Garden Festival in a couple of weeks. I also have a lot of fun Disney and non-Disney DIYs and craft projects coming up, and some other Disney non-crafty things as well planned. Have a great day, have a beautiful day, and I will see you next time.